friends, thanks for joining me for another episode of A Drink from Upstream. So I'm recording this devotional at the end of the day after being in my study all day in preparation for Sunday's sermon. And so hopefully this makes sense to you. My brain's maybe just a little bit taxed. But what I have to say here, I think is important, but it didn't make it into my sermon, but I think it will lay some groundwork for our understanding of the sermon. So hopefully you can get this in your heart and mind. Now, you've probably heard the phrase intrinsic value before. So intrinsic value is based on what something is worth to its owner. But there's the other side of intrinsic value is extrinsic value. That might be something you've not heard before, but extrinsic value is based on what an item could be sold for. So let me give you an example. So I have a 30-06 rifle, and my dad he served in Vietnam in the Air Force, and shortly after getting out of the Air Force, he purchased this rifle, which was right around the time that I was born. And so this rifle is basically 50 years old. And from my earliest memories, I can remember this is my dad's hunting rifle. And so I just had this I just really thought it was cool. Well, on my 13th birthday, my dad gave me that rifle. And so I have cherished this. It is one of my prized possessions. It's nostalgic to me. I love it because my dad gave it to me and because he hunted with it. And so when you think about extrinsic value and intrinsic value, this is a great example. The extrinsic value of this gun is pretty minimal. I'm kind of guessing, I'm no expert, but maybe $300-400. It's just got an old worn wooden stock, and it's still got the original 2x7 Leopold on it, the Leopold scope that my dad put on it. So it's probably extrinsic value is pretty low. But it's intrinsic value, because remember, it's based on what something is worth by its owner. I'm the owner of this, and so the intrinsic value of that rifle is, it's kind of basically priceless. I don't know if I would accept any amount of money for it. It's too precious to me. And so extrinsic value, you can see, is different than intrinsic value based on that. Now, in the sermon that I preached last Sunday, which was January 24th, in this same series, I said that wealth and being wealthy is relative. Again, it's based on where you live. It's based on the economy. And, if you live in Haiti, wealth is one thing. If you live in Hong Kong, wealth is another thing. And so it's relative. It's subject to some other things in play there. Now, while I think wealth and being wealthy is relative, here's another thought. I want to build on that. That the value of our monetary gifts to God, now remember, we're in this study, and so if we're going to understand money and possessions from a biblical point of view, we most certainly have to address this issue of giving, right? And so the value of our monetary gifts to God is also relative. It has an intrinsic value and it has an extrinsic value. And let me give you an illustration. So a $100 offering has an extrinsic value of $100. It's not really negotiable. It's not subject to opinion. $100 is $100. But for someone for whom money is really tight, like they don't have an excess, they have a very difficult time paying, making ends meet and all of that, for that person to give $100, the intrinsic value of that offering is much higher than $100. But for someone who is well off, the intrinsic value of that $100 is actually much less. So that's the groundwork that I want to lay, get you thinking, and I think that this Sunday's sermon, I believe it's going to be eye-opening for some of us, and I believe it's going to be inspirational as we continue to learn how to honor God, how to express our love for God in the way we steward the resources that He's blessed us with. So there you go. It's a drink from Upstream. God bless you.